This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
And Tunde! What a goal! It's absolutely world class from Marcus Tunde! Wrestler against Jones. Get in! A terrific goal by Fireman! Is there time for a winner? Is there it is? Josh Witness! Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week, my Wednesday edition. And I believe Ash has called this season 2, so because we took a bit of time off because no one really wanted to do it. And so what we did, we put the word out there again. And tonight we've got ourselves a new next lad for a shaving. Ladies and gents, it's Mr. Jim. Is it Capel or Capel? My apologies.
Capel.
Capel. Quite the intro, that weren't it? Quite the intro. I should have learnt that before we started. Now, Jim, it's a bit more of a more dour version of myself that I put on for this because I just want to sit and chat about your time with supporting Sheffield Wednesday. Why Wednesday is that was going to be one of the names of this segment we were going to call it actually, but we had to go with My Wednesday because Why Wednesday is something that probably gets shouted most weeks this season. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, So Jim, tell us about yourself. Where you from? Where you living? Are you from Sheffield? All the rest of it?
I'm from Sheffield. I originally lived in Sheffield for about a couple of years at Winkerbank, so at the Sheffield at the Wednesday end, if you like. But then actually grew up in Norton.
Right. Okay.
And at 18, I left for university, and now I live in Lincoln, which is So every day's an away day, if you like.
Well, every day is walking uphill with Lincoln. It's bloody awful. I spent a serious amount of time in Skegness, so I bet that's all of your bank holiday sorted, isn't
it? Not if I can help it. No, I tend to go back to Scarborough.
Oh, so fancy. Fancy.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go right back to the start then. So, tell me about your first game, why Sheffield Wednesday, all the rest of it. Let's get into it.
All right. Well, I'm assuming like 99.9% of other people that have been on here, it's all down to me dad.
Again, always the dad's fault.
Always, yeah. I wouldn't say didn't have a choice in it. It's more of he took me to Hillsborough for the first time, and it was in 1990. I was, I believe, 6, and it was against Spurs, and we lost 4-2, stood on the Kop. I spent most of the game trying to balance on my dad's shoulders because he put me up there so I could see. And it was a bit wobbly. I remember that clear as day. And all I do know, and I've known, I didn't know if I knew it at the time, but I've known since then that Gary Lineker and Paul Gascoigne were on that pitch that day.
Oh wow!
And so it was quite an introduction to football, if you like. I just remember being on the Kop, the place going berserk for Wednesday's 2 goals. I haven't got a clue who scored them. Can't remember.
Bear in mind, Jim, as well, I remember going in those early days, and there was that period of time where people used to just fall onto each other and think it was hilarious, and you're on your dad's shoulders. I bet that's bloody terrifying as a kid, isn't it?
It was, yeah. I think the only time I've been more terrified than that is when somebody got me tickets for the back row of Twickenham, and it was the highest thing I've ever seen in my life. But I just remember that game and remember immediately wanting to go again. I do remember that. And unfortunately, the next game we went to was a certain game against Nottingham Forest where we lost 3-0 to be relegated. And it was really strange because I kind of knew what relegation meant, even at that young age. and that it was a bad thing. I remember being in tears, went back to my old granddad's house back then, because my granddad was with us as well. And it was just devastating, absolutely devastating. And to see everybody else around you, grown men crying because of what had happened. And even though I'd been for 2 games, I just knew what had happened. And so I had like the summer to think about that and just saying, we'll go next year. My dad was, we'll see him win next year. Not a problem, not an issue. And then the love affair with football was Italia 90.
Yeah. I think there's something about that year that because the shit years of football of muddy pitches and people having tear-ups in the stadiums and stuff. Something happened in 1990. Something happened that summer with that World Cup, and everybody all of a sudden subscribed to football again. Albeit, to the point where 2 years later, club owners realised they could make a few quid by creating the Premier League, right? So there was something happened that summer where if you were the right age, football was a soap opera for you. It was like the boys' version of EastEnders and Coronation Street. And then just to go back on what you were saying as well, there's like there's an element of what's behind the curtain with going to the football with your dad, and I don't know if I can ever explain it, because you feel like it's the same feeling of when you went to. When your dad would go to the working men's club and you'd have to sit outside with your Panda Pop and random blokes would keep bringing you bags of crisps and another Panda Pop. You know what I mean?
Lads playing dominoes in the corner. Yeah. Occasionally they might let you shuffle the dominoes for them, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you were stood there and you thought it were great, like just shoveling them across that table. Yeah, there was something about wanting to be part of that little gang and wanting to be part of these working blokes that were just, you didn't want to be a burden, but you wanted to be part of it and you wanted to press the buttons on the gambler and stuff like that. And I feel like, but it's going to sound ridiculous, but the league standings and the football at that age between about 6 and about 10 didn't really matter. It was just being around that group of people and watching your dad be not dad is you know what I mean? He's just one of the blokes, and they're all ragging on him a little bit and going, "Shut up, you tight bugger," and things like that. You wanted to be around that. You know what I mean?
It was the people around it for me. It was. I just remember. I mean, I still stand in front of them now. They're just people that moan constantly for 90 minutes. I'll include myself in that on some games as well. I must admit.
Well, we're middle aged now, Jim. It's a God-given right. We put our work in, pal.
Yeah, definitely spent enough money on it. So,
in it,
there you go.
In it. So right, so it's you then did you start going regularly in 91 in that promotion season?
Yeah, 1991. Yeah, I just remember vividly the first game, or the first home game anyway, which I didn't go to my first away game until a couple of seasons later. But my first home game was Hull when we won 5-1. Hursty got 4, and I think Paul Williams got the other. And that was just ridiculous. That was one of them games where you think, well, we're going to do this every week now.
That's it, isn't it? Of course,
it's done. And then I think we went 1-1, 1-1, 1-1. And it was just not as they're not going to put 5 in every game, But that were brilliant, that game, because you still see some of the highlights pop up on like YouTube and internet now, and people share them on socials, and you still watch them and you still think, I'm going to watch this, even though you know what's going to happen. You just have to watch it again,
Yeah, it's like that. It's like that Liam Palmer goal at the home tie at the Peterborough semi-final. Every time, I don't think I've ever just scrolled past it.
No,
just blindly just watch it. I know full well. I can tell you the commentary word for word. Like,
and you're still wincing when the ball goes up. Oh no, and things like that. It's not getting to it, and
exactly right. So I tell you what, then I always find that Christmases and birthdays now from one particular member of your family, like your uncle or your dad or something, is always sorted out now. So what was your first shirt? What was the one that tell me about your first one and tell me about your favourite one.
Oh, right. The first one's going to cause a few ripples here. The first shirt was from the season before I first went, and I've still got it at home, and I've given it to my daughter. It's the pinstriped Finlux /VT Plastics blue and white 88.
You've still got it?
I've still got it, the same shirt. And yeah, I have still got. I wish I had it with me actually, but I haven't got it here. It's at me mum's. But that was actually bought for me by a friend of the family who was actually a Blade.
Brilliant.
And they got me that shirt, and I don't know if they even know that I've still got it. To be fair, but
wow,
yeah. So I passed that one down. So that was my first, and I quickly got the away shirt to go with it, which was the brilliant green and white hooped.
Right, listen, this shirt gets revered quite a lot, right? Like the lavender one.
I've still got it now, but in a much bigger size.
Oh right, yeah. Me too. And yes. You know what I realised is a man at 40 odd years old, I can't wear hoops. I can't. No. I pinstripe all day. Hoops, no.
Yeah.
But
I went into the pub wearing it for the first leg of the playoffs against Sunderland a couple of years ago. I just strolled in, and my mate, who's a Man City fan, took one look and said, "Oh, blimey, I didn't know you'd come as a tube of toothpaste."
Brilliant. But yeah, I that one gets revered quite a lot, but it's not pretty, is it? It's not a nice shirt, but it's just so far removed. I think that's it. It's just so far removed from the usual yellows and blacks that we get. I mean, who sat there and went, yeah, that one, yeah, green and white, that'll do. Ridiculous.
We'll make them look like Celtic, but we'll put some little blue stripes in between as well, just to make it look even more garish. Yeah.
See what they did there. Now, so let's move forward a bit. So obviously we went through the successful years and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so where were you for the Rumbelows Cup final then? I mean, you'd only been very young. I bet you were at home in your mum's front room, right?
It was actually my grandma's front room.
Brilliant.
It was on a really, really old boxy telly. I remember that.
Yeah.
My dad actually got a ticket for the game.
Wow.
He went, but he could only manage one, sadly. I constantly remind him about it when any argument comes up.
Especially when it comes to getting tickets for Wembley this time round. You know what I mean? Sorry, Dad, you ain't got the points, you know?
Yeah, well, again, unfortunately, I had a ticket for this one and couldn't go for against Barnsley. There was my daughter, unfortunately, was in hospital, and I had to stay put. So, unfortunately,
I'm glad you picked the most important one there. To be fair, pal, you know what I mean. There aren't many things where people can go, well, you know, are you not coming to Wembley? What the bloody hell not for? Well, I mean, don't.
There's nurses there. What more do you want? You know, that's the sort of thing. So yeah, I couldn't go, but the good thing about that is that my daughter actually watched the game with us. And
that's nice.
It was brilliant. So she started crying at the end, but we found out since that's because me and my dad shouted too loud and we scared the living crap out of her. But anyway, yeah. What were we say? Yeah, the Rumbelows Cup final. Yeah, that was that's the first time I ever remember crying at a win.
Yeah.
I just remember little things about that game. The game, let's be honest, was bloody awful. It was an atrocious game, apart from Sheridan's goal. 39 minutes, 52 seconds. But I do remember that. But I just remember at the end of the game, not being surprised that we'd won, because what a team we were. And Man United at the time, we're just thinking, we'll roll over these. We've rolled over Chelsea. We've rolled over Derby. Chelsea in the semi-final, by the way, was one of my favourite ever games attended. That was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think that was one of my first games. I've got all the programme covers on a wall over there, and I think that was one of my first games, the Chelsea one. My dad tried to drag me to Rotherham United for about 4 years up until then, and then went with my granddad and my uncle and went, I don't want to go to Millmore anymore. It smells like tinkle.
Well, when you went to Millmore, because I went there to see the reserves once, or I went to see the Intertoto Cup or something like that at Millmore. And you're peeing up against a wall.
It's literally a wall. I was trying to explain this to some of the kids at my work, and I'm like, you walked in and it was just breeze block, like maze, and it just had a trough, a pipe, half a pipe in the bottom. You went in, peed on the brick, and then walked out again. That were it.
Yeah, with wet shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's ridiculous. But it was just that Chelsea game was the best I went to that season. Was that Chelsea game, that second leg. And people can't mention Danny Wilson without shouting "did well" before it. Now it's absolutely brilliant. I reckon I could do the commentary word for word from that video, you know, and because like I'm assuming I would have been at school the next day, and it was a late night because we stopped to watch everybody run on the pitch and things like that. We were up in the south stand, so we couldn't get anywhere near that, but just a brilliant night. That probably the first time I'd seen a really proper atmosphere. That was that was superb. And then to see the final with like my grandma, who was a Wednesday fan, but not a big Wednesday fan sort of thing, and my mum going mental as well, because me and my mum and my dad went to all the games that season, all three of us, and wow. Brilliant. And because she was at home with me and my sister, and we're all there watching this. My sister was only a baby, like, just a brilliant day. And I remember me great granddad, God rest his soul, ringing me at the end of the game, and I'm just crying down the phone to him because he was a massive Wednesday fan, and just little things you remember like that not other people won't remember because it don't matter to them, and just little things like that made that day brilliant.
Yeah, that everybody will have their own versions of that call from your granddad. You know what I mean? They'll all have those little stories, and that's, I guess, that's what this arm of the show's for, just to drill down on those stories. So I tell you what, so we had a good couple of seasons. I'm not just going to skip by them. I just want to move into the mid-90s era, because that for me, because I was 15, 16 now. These were my halcyon days now. So I remember Hurst and Waddle and Sheridan and all that. But then when I got hit with Benito Carboni and Paolo Di Canio and Graham Hyde for some reason, and you know what I mean? And those years, do you know what? Underrated AF, and up there with Ian Nolan.
Back my English book in a Graham Hyde poster. It was brilliant, man.
Good. I'm proud of you. Looked like Gareth Keenan from The Office, but still top player. Like, you know what I mean?
He did, yeah.
Look weird when he shaved his head when he went to Birmingham. But
what a battler, I mean, what a battler.
Right, wasn't he? Like, so you know, you've got those years now. So you're probably approaching around 12, 13, and so. So I suppose towards the late 90s, you're now going with your pals and you're going with your mates, or you're meeting up with your family while you're there, and you're on the away days and stuff like that. So what I want to know is about the mischief and some of the big memories and on the away days, and which ones you remember the most.
If I'm honest, the mischief didn't really come till I was of drinking age.
Well, yeah.
Really. So we're talking
early millennium,
early 2000s, really. I remember feeling about the mid-90s, even back then, really nostalgic for the early 90s team, because my all-time hero is Roland Nilsson. This is when all my mates watching this will go, "Oh God, he's not on about him again, is he?" And yeah, sadly, and he was brilliant. And then it just, no disrespect for this guy, but to get replaced by Peter Atherton wasn't exactly, and Ian Nolan at the other fullback as well. It was just a bit underwhelming, and that whole sort of period was underwhelming. It was. I mean,
on one end of the scale, you had your Peter Athertons, and on the other, you've got two of the greatest gifted footballers we've ever seen this year. But it was contrast. It was either one or the other. Like, I used to look at Mark Pembridge, right? And Mark Pembridge would have been a good footballer in another team that didn't play with flair like we did at this time, right? He was a real industrious footballer, as was Andy Booth. But we wanted quicker move and pass and dribble because of these two players that we had in the Italians, but you can't partner them up with Peter fucking Atherton and Mark Pembridge.
No, you can't. I mean, there was good players in there. You know, there was good players in there. I mean, going right to the back. I mean, Kev, consistent as old.
Yeah, in Des Bloody Walker.
And Des Walker, probably the best defender I've ever seen at Wednesday, anyway. And Mark Bright was still knocking around then and doing brilliant things. But I just think that because everybody tried to look for because English players started to be too expensive, didn't they?
Yep.
And we didn't have that kind of money to get you another Chris Waddle, for example. We weren't in that. We weren't in that position, so we had to go. And how we managed to get Di Canio, I was surprised at the time. And Carboni, not because to be fair, before he came to Wednesday, I didn't know a lot about him. To be fair, but Di Canio knew from being up playing for Celtic.
Mm-hmm.
But we'd go for like what was his name now? Was it like Sedlowski and people like that, and Sinetti, who scored that one goal and burst into tears?
Yeah, that's him. That's him. Interesting story about Gochi Sedlowski, who was dubbed the Macedonian Tony Adams, whatever the hell that means. We had John Newsom on the show back in lockdown, and he said the bloke had one leg longer than the other, and he kept running around in a circle. He couldn't run in a straight line, which I absolutely adored as a tale.
Bit like Tony Adams's car, then. Yeah.
In it. So right, Jim, let's get on the away days then. Let's tell me about the away days. Tell me about the mischief. Come on.
Right, okay. My first one was as a young kid, so obviously no mischief, at Palace, which and Palace on a Tuesday night, which was a long way to go. But it was in the holidays, so I was all right. And my dad went to work 2 hours after the coach got back, which I thought was good going. We'd been to West Ham and been literally spat on for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
At the old Upton Park. Away days, some brilliant things. I remember two relatively recently, actually, although probably if you look back on your memories, it's probably like 10 years ago now. One at Notts County, which was brilliant, and one at Leicester. And my mate, I used to go with 3 or 4 people, and my mate Adam, we always used to go down from Lincoln. And Adam, he'd had a few too many before, and we'd lost 3-0. So he's got to that stage where it's like, I can hurdle that hedge. That's no problem. Straight in there. That's not an issue. And we just had some really good days. Just nothing that people say, oh, mischief and stuff like that. Not really. A little bit boring, really. A little bit boring we were. But we just used to do, yes. Well, I remember going to Derby, and Pride Park just got zero soul at all. It's just an industrial estate car park in it, and there was an harvester on the edge of the industrial estate. Went in there, and I was like, one of the lads went up and pint of lager, please. They went, £1.50. Went, nice. We'll have 6 then, So. And it turns out we were on row Z again, or row Y as it were, because they couldn't afford a row Z. And and I'm stood up on this thing trying to get a better view of the game, dancing around and trying to, because we were always crap at Derby away. So just trying to get a better view. Turns out I'm on the coppers stand, and two coppers come over and I was like, oh, no, son, not on there. And as it happens, I struggled to walk downstairs without any rail, and they didn't have any rail down there. So my mate, in his wisdom, thought, I know what I'll do. I'll give him a fireman's lift down the concourse. So he's carried me down all the way down the bottom of the stairs, little did I know we were stood right next to the bloody Derby fans, so I got so much abuse for the rest of that game from the Derby fans.
It weren't the one where we lost 3-0, was it? I think I want to say it was Rory.
Which one?
Well, yeah, there was one that was Rory Delap's debut, right? And we went down on the Intercity Owl, and one of the lads went, "Are we just in the shirts today, lads, or what?" And we went, "Yeah, fuck it, let's get the colours out." So we're down, and we were on like the third row behind the goal, and it had sideways sleet and snow halfway through the game, and I've never been so cold in my damn life. Worst day out of my life.
It wasn't that one, but it was 3-0.
Brilliant. We're really good at Derby away, aren't we? So. So let's talk about favourite players then. I mean, everybody goes with Hurst, Sheridan, Waddle, and you mentioned Roland Nilsson and Des Walker earlier on. But I kind of want to find out, because everybody says them, right? I want to hear some of the modern day heroes, random ones that you've gone, do you know what? I used to really like Philip Scott or Danny Sonner or something like that. You know what I mean? I want to hear about them ones that you've got a really weird affinity for.
Right, good question.
I do try.
Well, yeah. I was a big fan of Bullen when he was around. He was brilliant. I've got him behind me, as you can see. And quite a few in that team. Glenn Whelan was absolutely superb around that 05 team and stuff like that. I was lucky enough when I was a student. I did some work experience at the Wednesday press office. I got to work there for 2 weeks.
Wow.
And it was, the lads in there were brilliant. And I got to go on the golf day, not to play golf, thankfully, because that would have been embarrassing. But, and I got to meet all the lads and stuff like that. I knew, and they were all absolutely brilliant. And all I remember is really feeling sorry for Giline, Undumbu and Sungu, because
why?
Because nobody would speak to him because he didn't speak any English whatsoever. And bless him, they just left him on the side of this on like a picnic bench while they all went off and played golf, and he was just stood there like that.
They just left him there.
They just with like somebody with him, like one of the club workers. I don't know who it was. I can't remember. And everybody else buggered off and just played golf.
Sure.
And your mate Lee Peacock was there. He turned up in +4s.
Of course he did.
Yeah, which I weren't surprised at all, because so I got to know a couple of them players, and so I'll always have a bit of an affinity to that team.
They had a really good team camaraderie, didn't they? That promotion team, like the players that we've had on the show from that era, and the way Lee talks about it, like he really looks back on it with some kind of like doe-eyed expression, like that. Like they really enjoyed each other's company. If we got Gillian and Sumbo and Dungo on, he might say something a bit different. But they were really annoyed that they got broke up when we got promoted after Cardiff, weren't they?
Yeah, I think we played it. I think we played it wrong after the Cardiff game, because there was definitely some players that were going to go, like was it Laurie Wilson and people like that, and Lewis McMahon or have I got that right?
Yeah, I can't remember. People like that.
Yeah, and anyway, people like that, and they kept like, you'd keep the core like your McLeans and Peacock and all that, but we just added not great.
Well, we've done that this season. We've done exactly the same thing this season, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think we've done it. We did it when we came up in 2012 as well. I think the next season, people think we need better players to go up to the championship with, and they get dross. And who'd have thought Leroy Lita would have been terrible? And he was brought in, and
everywhere he's gone, he's shit goals, hasn't he?
We get everybody 2 years too late. That's our problem.
Yeah, tell me about it. I wish I'd have loved to have a 23-year-old Barry Bannon playing for Wendy. Can you imagine that? Like,
oh dear.
So let's talk about up to date then, right? So you mentioned you mentioned the Wembley game, and you mentioned, because we don't talk about the dark years from about 2000 to about 2004. Those are the dark years, and I must admit, my memory of them is pretty sketchy.
Well, that was my university. That was my university days. So I wish they hadn't have been dark days. That was, oh my God! I used to get the absolute piss ripped out of me for that. That was
because you're walking around in a shirt that no one's ever seen before. You know what I mean? And they're like, "What is that you've got on? This is Napoleon's Casino, my friend." So
there was more Northampton Town fans in my uni than there were Wednesday.
Ridiculous. So let's talk about current season, because I'm just wary of time. Let's talk about current season. Let's talk about how you think it's gone. I mean, well, it's not really up for the lap of the gods. How it's gone. It's more how you think it's going to go, and how you feel about Danny Rule and Chisco Munoz and Chansiri and all the rest of it. So let's get to the point where Darren Moore's gone. They've not agreed terms, and then let's talk about it from there.
Right. Well, I was disappointed that he went.
Mm-hmm.
However, managing in League One obviously must be a lot different to managing the Championship. So whether he'd have been successful, I don't know.
Well, I tell you what, Jim. Sorry to chime in there, because there was always a part of me that when Moore went, there was always a part of me that sat there and thought, can he do it in the Championship? Have we put him on a pedestal of, here's this guy who got us up, and we're like, yeah, Darren Moore's great, he's amazing, but he did drop his ass last March, like in March and April. Like, can he actually do this? And then since he's gone to Huddersfield, now I'm not saying he's taken over a great team, but at least he got a couple of draws, right? You know what I mean? So that itch for me is scratched. Yeah. Especially now that I really like the gaffer that we've got now. But go on, carry on.
Yes, that's all right. Anyway, so he's gone, and I just think I had the same reaction to Xisco coming in, or Munoz, or whatever you want to call him. Same reaction to him coming in as I did to Josh Lukai, which is this is knee jerk. I don't know a lot about him. I hope he does well, but you can just see this not happening. And whereas when Roll comes in, I know a bit about him from basically watching football, Germany and places he's been before. And you just think, firstly, it's depressing that the manager's younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it's you just think he's got it. You can see he's got a process, and I think he's doing things right. I saw the game against Bristol City Saturday, and we looked all right. We looked all right despite losing 1-0. It was. I think there was more positives than negatives come out of that.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. And then now, since it's just today, just to timestamp where we are in the year, it's just come out today that they got the red card wrong. In spite of me spending the entirety of last night's recording talking about how I can see it even should have been a red card. Even the EFL. If it happened the other way, I'd have been absolutely incensed.
I'd have been screaming for it. And at the end of the day, they should, ban Dawson for a game for a terrible pass. But that's...
I'm not allowed to. I promised everybody I'm not allowed to talk about him anymore, and I keep using the "if I speak, I get into serious trouble" from Jose Mourinho. So
you need to be more Postecoglou and less Arteta, don't you? Really?
Yeah, just say mate all the time. Yeah. Oh, that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. So, Jim, thanks a lot for joining us tonight, pal. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I just hope that that the season turns itself round. And thanks a lot for joining us. Jim, see you later.
Cheers, mate.